Welcome to Tekedia Daily. I'm Ndubuisi, Ekekwe. A conversation today will focus on the ICT Bank of Nigeria, which is certainly a development finance institution which the Nigerian government is working to establish in order to accelerate investment in the ICT and the broad technology space. It's very important to understand the environment, why government wants to do this. The commercial banks are not necessarily structured for investing in startups with more than 20% interest rate. These banks cannot necessarily become engines that will help to drive necessary investment for us to build a startup economy. You don't blame the banks. You just have to blame the process and the ecosystem where they work. The cyclical challenges of oil-dependent economy makes it very difficult for them to make loans for a very long time. Naira can fall from 100 naira to dollar, can skyrocket into 300 naira to a dollar. So making loans for a very long time becomes extremely challenging for banks. And also we have the DFI specifically focusing on the industry, called the Bank of Industry. But this bank is not necessarily structured for startups, requiring collateral, requiring sureties, and all kinds of documentations because it wants to secure, of course, that makes sense. Investment is making in these companies. We don't have anything for startups, and our venture capital industry is still at the level of infancy. So I do believe vividly that government is right in order for us to catalyze and see this industry, the startup economy. We have to actually do something different. I commend the Minister of Communications for the Republic of Nigeria for this particular initiative. It's far better than the Smart City initiative that he started. So these are some of the points I will be sharing, what the government could consider as it begins this process of establishing this ICT bank. I will suggest that the bank should be made a clearinghouse. There is no need of building another banking institution. What I mean here is that the bank should pool the resources, most likely getting it from Nigerian budget, and now hold it. And then it will ask VCs and banks, any institution that's going to invest based on its construct, to compete for the funds. And these venture capital firms or banks, they have to be local, and they have to cover the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. So you must have a physical location in the region where you need to actually ask for this funding. In other words, if you want to invest in the southeast part of Nigeria, you have to have a physical location, presence in the southeast part of Nigeria. This makes sense because these startups are not just looking for cash alone, they're also looking for mentoring. They're also looking for management support. They're also looking for leadership support. And that means by being present within those specific areas, we are going to have these VCs and these banking institutions provide necessary support that will help them become very successful. Government will also find a way to risk this banking institution. In other words, the banks themselves have to provide, or the VCs themselves have to provide a kind of collateral. And also they need to have an experience. We don't want a scenario where a VC suddenly somebody registers a fund today and say he's a VC just because he wants to participate in this particular government program. It requires 3 years of prior experience. There must be a track record of investing in startups. Now, if a bank wants to do the same thing, the bank also has to meet that requirement. It has to demonstrate that it has been investing in startups as far at least in the last 3 years. I suggest that the government has to make this fund at 5% interest rate to the venture capital firms or the banks. Making it this way means that they actually have to return something back to government so that they don't feel that this is a giveaway. The government also needs to structure a strategic guarantee of about up to 75% for seed investment, essentially less than $20,000. For instance, most VCs in Africa, they always require you to go into post-revenue. But we actually need the capacity for venture capital firms and banks for this program to actually take more risk. So I recommend the government has to provide 75% guarantee of any investment, especially at the seed phase of $20,000. No single VC can make more than 5 of such investments in any calendar year. And then if you invest more than $20,000, maybe in growth phase of these startups, government 75% guarantee will not be effective, will not be applied, because it is believed at that time that you have actually done a lot of homework and due diligence to very, very sure that this particular startup is going to do well. What we have to also offer these VCs and banks that are specifically focusing on these particular opportunities, they will have a tax holiday for 10 years. In other words, the money government gives them, they can make money from the money government is giving them, but they don't have to pay taxes on the profits they make over the next 10 years. Rather, the specific tax that we have forgone as a country, we require for them to reinvest that specific tax back into startups. The other part that is not part of government, profit, they can do anything they want to do with it. What I'm saying here, the government has to give them a tax holiday. That tax holiday must be reinvested into the startups. Government has to have an investment committee, but not necessarily for it to actually be supervising what the VCs and the banks are doing. But this investment committee will be a necessity for each of the VCs and each of the banks, bringing industry players to make sure that people are not necessarily abusing the process and bringing in corruption into the system. You know, we've heard a lot of terrible things about the UN program, where people were investing in family members, essentially giving government money. We don't want that to happen. So we have to find a way or find a process, either the Security and Exchange Commission or the Bank of Industry or the specific unit of the Central Bank of Nigeria, have to set up an independent committee for each of these specific VCs or banking institutions that will be involved in this startup initiative. If we do this, we're going to build a very strategic foundation which is going to drive the future of startup Nigeria. I'm so excited about this initiative because as an entrepreneur myself, I have seen that capital is a very enabling factor for you to transition that idea into a product. Money speaks. And when that capital is not available, you discover nothing great happens. You know, the Y Combinator, one of the eminent accelerators in America, just working on raising $1 billion to invest in the future startups of the 21st century. The Nigerian government, I do believe, must put $100 million in order to see this ICT bank. We have to do it as a country because it's time. We are listening to Tekedia Daily.